We have breaking news. A bill full of President Trump's key priorities is facing an uncertain future after Republicans failed to advance it out of committee. And that's despite pressure from the president himself. Several hardliners had announced their opposition, saying they want changes to key elements of the bill, like Medicaid work requirements. ABC's Jay O'Brien's on Capitol Hill with the latest on that. Jay, a little while ago, President Trump urged Republicans to get on board. He told them to stop talking and get this done. That doesn't seem to have done the trick here.
It wasn't enough for 5 Republican hardliners on the House Budget Committee who just voted to reject this big sweeping piece of legislation, all of President Trump's campaign promises that have some kind of legislative component compiled into one, what Republicans up here on the Hill call big, beautiful bill. But still 5 Republican hardliners voting against this bill, saying in their view it doesn't do enough to cut spending. They want stricter changes to Medicaid, work requirements to kick in sooner than when they do in 2029 under the current text of the legislation. There are concerns that they have that this legislation would increase the federal deficit, doesn't do enough for fiscal responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. So they voted down this bill. They voted to keep it in committee. It does not get out of committee. It doesn't go onto the House floor for a vote the way House Republican leadership wanted to put it on the floor next week. And they did this in defiance of President Trump here. President Trump made it clear in a post on Truth Social just a few hours ago that he wanted Republican unity, as you mentioned, Diane, and he didn't want any quote-unquote grandstanders amongst the ranks of House Republicans. And even after that post from the president, again, these 5 Republicans still voted against this legislation, the vehicle, again, for the president's legislative agenda, and it puts this committee back to square one. They're going to have another vote at some point on this budget legislation. It's just unclear when they're going to do that, whether that's going to be today or likely next week when Congress returns.
So what are the next steps now, Jay?
It really puts at least this committee back to square one. And remember, Diane, this is legislation that House Republicans have been writing for months and have been wrangling amongst themselves for months on how to craft. And finally, House Republican leadership felt that they had enough of their members on the same page to advance this through the committee process. We saw the process of writing this legislation happen over the course of this week. Those were those marathon hearings that we saw begin on Tuesday afternoon and carry all the way into Wednesday. There were tension in those, but enough was done to get enough people on board that legislation that it got out of those various committees. And even still, we heard concerns from Republican hardliners about those issues with the Medicaid changes that they have that I mentioned, and also issues with the general spending of this legislation. And also there's a contingent of Republicans from New York and California who want a higher cap on the state and local tax deduction. All of that to say, Mike Johnson still had his work cut out for him to get enough votes on the floor to pass this next week when he wanted to. But he's had another setback here because they don't even have the votes to get this legislation, as we just saw moments ago, to get it out of the Budget Committee.